right before the pandemic hitting, that was what I was going to propose, was to get additional funding somewhere, I don't know, OPVP, somebody provide funding for us to either outsource some sort of review process that I'm supervising so that we can review all of those financial reports, 5 years worth, and so that whether these reports are accurate, and therefore I'm able to attest to them and make a drawdown. So that is the, if our office is charged to make drawdowns, and if I can't be reassured of these reports that our office didn't prepare, then that's a problem. So I just want to make that clear. In terms of the Delegate the question on have we earned interest on the CARES Fund? As I mentioned earlier, we immediately, once we got these deposits from Treasury, we, as it is allowed, we invest those in our liquid short-term investments, which is the money market, and we've so far to date earned $140,000 on those investments since beginning of the month. Those are essentially, given that our some of the Fed rates are near zero, the best option to do was the money market. And there's federal law that we have to comply with on what we can invest in. I just want to make that clear as well. Also, your other question was on the possibility of essentially stockpiling, similar to the strategic national stockpiling, given the compliance with CARES Fund and Treasury guidance. Regarding, I think in terms of our water projects, I think what you're asking is whether there's a possibility of stockpiling materials for our water projects, whether there's a way that can be done. Let's see. We do have the guidance, the Treasury guidance, and on page 2 of the guidance, and I'm looking at the last one, which is updated June 30th, 2020, talks about costs incurred during the covered period, and about 3 paragraphs in, it talks about goods being delivered during the covered period, and it does talk about the possibility of if you make bulk purchases and it's customary to make bulk purchases, then obviously, you make one big purchase and you don't know if those purchases go to the covered period, which, as we all know is March 1st to December 30th. It does make a little bit of a leeway, and essentially Treasury saying that we're not going to be really, scrutinizing those things. But again, it goes back to, is it customary that you make bulk purchases? If it's, if you can't really allocate when you're going to use those goods. For example, you make a big bulk purchase in November, you get it delivered on December 30th, or let's say December 25th, you're going to use 5 days worth, but then you're going to use, 10 days worth in January. They're not going to really sit there and say, oh, you use 15 in January, that type of thing. But again, the guidance talks about whether it's customary for you to do bulk purchases, and you can't allocate one way or another. So if you utilize those types of criteria, then now we're talking about 2-year projects for which we're going to stockpile materials. Now, that becomes a problem because you have to get into the mind of, let's say, a treasury auditor. The auditor is going to come in and say, well, you have a bunch of pipes, and number one, how is that meeting the immediate needs for COVID-19, like today, during the cover period, even like immediately? How is a pile of pipes going to meet your pandemic situation? So that's one. Number two is, do you normally buy a whole bunch of pipes? Well, I don't think so. So that's the type of questioning we have to go through to assess the audit risk. And so if the Inspector General for Treasury comes in, they're not going to sit there and say, well, I want to know what your lawyer said either. They're just going to say, well, we don't think this is allowable. We'll argue about it later, but they're going to come back and say, we don't think it's allowable, so pay us back. So those are the types of audit risk from which we're advising. And so definitely in terms of consumable goods, for example, your PPEs, if you want to stockpile it, I think you have a better argument. We have a better argument for doing that. And I think, I don't remember if there was another section of the guidance or the FAQs which said you can do that. But if you're talking about materials that go into a project, now that becomes a different scenario. So I just want to point out some of those criteria and also the specific language where it talks about some of those areas from which you're asking. So Shazada, Delegate Yellowhair, essentially you're asking about reimbursing ourselves. I mentioned earlier, if we've already expended using, let's say, general fund dollars or 638 fund dollars, and whether we can use CARES Act money to reimburse ourselves and what do the numbers look like, we can do that. And also, we're trying to get those numbers. For example, here, I'll give you another example on the payroll. We're working on the payroll support program, so we can reimburse ourselves. We can also, I think with the latest Treasury FAQs, updates, and guidance, I believe putting people on administrative leave, we haven't budgeted for it. So I believe putting people that are non-essential on administrative leave, I think we are allowed to use CARES Fund for that. So, which is a big deal, because then the amount that we can reimburse ourselves is up there. And I think then your question, Delegate Yellowhair, then what do we do with those savings? And I think that's something that I think I've been saying we can use those for projects, if the numbers are up there. That's one way to take CARES money and use what is allowable, and then turn around with our reimbursement unrestricted dollars. We can deploy those dollars for projects, let's say, and we don't have the time restriction and so forth. So that's what I wanted to just answer regarding that. So Ado, I believe I answered as much as I can on those questions. So Ado, yeah.
Thank you. That go back to the floor. And controller, I got 2 new players. Honorable Brown. Honorable Brown.
Hi.
With us?
Yeah, the speaker. Hello.
Yate.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
Speaker. Okay. You speaker. Thank you, Shanala, controller, for your report. Thank you. I'm listening and I'm hearing a lot of good conversation for that. I wanted to narrow down some questions here. With in this pandemic with the CHISTN fund, what would you? I know looking forward, we will have budget shortfalls. We will have some shortfalls because now, especially if we're not have any gaming revenue, oil and gas, it dropped a little, it dropped some, and with our investments, the return, there is return, but so there's still going to be shortfalls. So what would be in the best interest as to take care of our people in the future in this pandemic? What would you say on the CHISTN funding and how the nation we have plans to expend that? With your recommendation, and I know that you said you consult with a number of individuals, consultants, auditors, external auditors, etc., and you are well aware of how the market is and looking into the future. Would you recommend, with all your experiences and what other tribes are doing, what other organizations are doing expending their government dollars, would you recommend we halt all spending on the CHISTN funding right now, concentrate on the CARES fund? And then the other thing was also with your consultation with all your consultants and external auditors, how so far you're looking at council, and you've been on a number of phone calls with committees as well as Nabikietki and now council. Are there any red flags that are going up already on some of these plans that we have? And I think going forward, that's something that we would need to hear so we are well aware and so we're not paying the money back at the end. And then the other thing would be for housing. I know that I'm working on introducing an amendment to Delegate Amber Knez-Bakrati's legislation 0144-20 on housing, and the thought is to help NHA, and also we as delegates and chapters, we're well aware of, like right now I'm actually just getting I'm trying to work with the NHA housing to try to get an elderly 70-year-old man a house, and also there was 2 burnouts in Chilchimbito, and then also what I'm not sure if this is true, but we're also hearing. I'll reach out to Sandstone here in a little bit, but I'm hearing that Canton Township reported to me that people are starting to get evicted from their homes, and it's because they're not getting they are not working. So I wanted to take care of our people and put this set aside. What if we pay some of their rent, people that live in these NHA Sandstone housing? Or I'm looking also at families. I know I have families that are living in severely dilapidated homes, and winter's coming, and we need to prepare for that. How can we help them? So I wanted to set aside dollars so we can concentrate on even not just people without homes, but I know families with, again, dilapidated homes, and they're trying their best. Our Navajo people are trying their best. Like, living on the nation is hard. It's harsh. We don't get paid enough. Our people don't get paid enough. They are living paycheck to check, and I think we can use some of these funds helping our people. And then the other things is looking into the future for schools, even workplaces. And I see this, I don't know how true this is on social media and looking online. People send us a lot of information, but going into the entrance of buildings like schools and work buildings, there's like disinfectant pods or they're like little pop-up things before you enter. And I'm like, is that where the direction that we might be going? So let me ask those questions and I'll reserve the right time. Yeah.
Okay, you reserve your time at Honorable Brown at 33 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Daniels. The floor is yours. Honorable Daniels. Daniels, can you hear me?
Yes, speaker, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, good afternoon, Speaker, and also 24th Navajo Nation Council. I appreciate the report from Navajo Nation Controller. Navajo Nation based on CARES Act fund based on projects that water based telecommunications. So people vendors. Yeah, the vendors they vendors. We have tour operators here in Manama Valley, Antelope Canyon, other areas. Nagai Canyon, the shade. Tour operators. They have drivers. Cooks. They have local. So they're affected by this COVID-19, this pandemic. So yeah, but proposal from Parks and Recreation, Navajo Nation. AS So I did an amendment for Navajo Nation Parks and Recreation, requesting for $10 million to use the CARES Act dollars No, there's no amendment so but that amendment again it passed, so it's on the legislation. But that legislation is still with So there's another other amendment similar to this my amendment. The Delegate Slater, the amendment would be at the very hardship. The Chamber of Commerce. So recommend amendment I know double dipping but this these dollars, the proposal that I amendment dollars that are going to be paid out to vendors, tour operators, $10 million to be extended by December 2020. The other amendment. But these the amendment that I made. Madam Controller, even I did that. Speaker, is there time?
Reserved your time. Honorable Daniels at 1 minute, 24 seconds. Let me go back. Everybody else on the queue, I have one more individual with reserved time. Honorable James, are you back online?
Speaker, Vice Chair Smith.
Honorable James. Honorable James. Okay, with that, let me go back to the controller. Madam Controller, go back to you.
Okay. Otto, yeah, Speaker, and then 24th Navajo Nation Council, Otto, Delegate Brown, I believe one of your questions was given our general fund revenues, so historically we've been relying on our natural resources. Should we recommend a halt on Houston and so forth for future budget shortfalls? Although I could out a been nice basis now so in terms of on the big picture is that for example the pandemic that linked to March and to we are heavily dependent on our natural resource. Every time I talk about the nation's bond financing, it was stable, but one of the things they looked to for us was whether we are able to diversify in generating general fund dollars away from our natural resources. So if we're heavily dependent on oil revenues, then anytime the market is volatile, as it was the last few months, those types really hamper the nation. So we have to look for other funding sources, whether that means manufacturing, that means retail development, those types of things. So increasing our tax base, so our ability to generate revenues to government entities, like your state and your counties, they do have a tax base. With ours, we generally don't have that the way other governmental entities have. So we have to develop some of these sectors. For instance, our manufacturing and all of those get impacted by, the tax other industries such as housing and retail development and so forth. So that's, as a nation, I think we need to start really looking into those avenues. Otto, I think your other question was red flags as to CARES funds. I just wanted to say that the legislation, I tried to, at the time, think that something is law, and then I'm following it. That's not good law. So it's really been problematic to operate under those conditions. So the other thing that I just want to say is I know everybody, it is in our best interest, and everybody has the same interest in mind, leadership as well as staff, and also across the three branches, to expend these dollars, and come December 30th, we should expend all of it. I know everybody has that best interest in mind. However, one of the red flags I do want to mention is a breakdown in what we call internal control. And so, because we internally have our process, for example, procurement,